Girls, Matt here with Grab the Go Bag. This video is going to be National Registry Prep video number 4, and it's kind of in depth because we want you to understand as we go through an exam that we created what's happening at each step. So we actually broke it into 2 parts. This is going to be part 1. We're going to focus on the initial part of the exam and how the questions are presented and what happens when you get them correct or incorrect. And then in part 2, we don't really need to keep going through that stuff. It's going to be very repetitive, so we're just going to kind of focus on speeding it up and then what happens at the end. How does the exam decide when it's going to end? So this specific scenario is going to be called passing with the minimum number of questions. It's the easiest to understand, and it's the one that you really want to shoot for as someone taking the exam, okay? And we'll give you a few hints on how you would most likely be able to do that towards the end of the video. All right, let's do a quick reminder about the different details that we know about the exam. First, we have 5 categories: airway, which includes ventilation and respiration; cardiology, which also includes resuscitation; trauma; medical, which includes OBGYN; and operations. We're going to have somewhere between 70 to 120 test questions, minimum to maximum. And we're going to have 10 pilot questions out of that 70 to 120 that are not scored. They don't count. They have nothing to do with our progression or whether we pass or fail. Essentially, pilot questions are there to test out questions for the next exam to figure out whether they're going to be graded questions on a future exam or not. You can't review prior questions because of the way that adaptive exams are delivered, one question at a time, and you can only see one question at a time. All right, you have 2 hours or 120 minutes maximum time to take the exam, which averages out to be about 1 to 2 minutes per question. So here's what we're looking at in this video. We have created an adaptive exam using the 5 categories of the National Registry, using the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and using a style of delivery that's called a series of questions. And we chose to use 3 questions in each series, and that allows us to make a decision every single time without having a tie of whether you answered more correct or more incorrect, and you're going to see how that makes the test move forward. Okay, we're going to be able to track what happens as we walk through the exam, and that's the point of this video. So take a look here at this table. This is the beginning of the exam. Again, we're looking at a scenario where we pass with minimum questions. You're going to see a question number column. You're going to see the category that question belongs to. You'll see what question it is in the series and which series we happen to be on in that particular category. You'll see the difficulty or the Bloom's level of the category as we referenced in an earlier video, and you'll see whether it's a pilot question or not. You'll notice the questions right now that we see a P in the pilot column, those are purple rows entirely, just to remind us that they have no effect on our score in the exam. Okay, and then finally you'll see the result of whether you got the question right or wrong. Now on the right side, you're going to see a rolling tally of what competence level we've achieved in each of these 5 categories: airway, cardiology, trauma, medical, and finally operations. Now you can see right now that we don't have enough information at the start of the exam to even have a competence level. But you can see that at question 10, we will have a competence level in trauma, and we're going to explain how that happens here in just a minute. Okay. Now we're looking at the whole exam. The exam has been randomized already. The first thing we did was pick where our pilot questions are going to be by random numbers, and we've got 10 pilot questions. Again, they're in purple, and we're going to see they have no effect on the grade. And then we randomized the rest of the scored questions, which are white background, in the 5 different categories. So we have airway covered here, as well as cardiology, trauma, medical in blue, and finally operations in light blue. And that's going to be the other 60 questions that do count towards what's going to happen on the end of the exam, pass or fail. Now, take a look at the lower right-hand corner. This is a chart of how each question was answered. You're going to see 5 categories represented there in the left column. You'll see that the question, it has a associated difficulty level with it. You're going to see they're all 2 in this case because we start with 2, because we've set the level to pass at a level 4 for this exam. So you're going to start slightly easier You won't start at the bottom easiest level, but you will not start at the desired level to pass either. You'll start a little bit underneath that. So we're going to start at level 2, and you see the category is represented with just a single letter. 2A for airway, 2C for cardiology, T for trauma, M for medical, and O for operations. All right, and the C's underneath the columns 1, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 3, that indicates that all the answers are correct so far. So we're going to see how this works step by step. First, we're going to look at question 1. This is a medical question. It's one question of 3 in the series of medical questions, and it's a Bloom's level 2. So you're going to see that represented down here in 2M. And we're going to look and see we got that question correct, okay? So down here in the table in the lower right, we're going to circle that C to show our progress. We've got one question out of 3 correct so far, okay? Next question, it's going to be trauma. 1 of 3 in the series of questions on trauma. Again, we're going to see that represented here by 2T. And once again, we're going to get that correct, so we're going to circle to show our progress, okay? Now, this is happening behind the scenes in the exam. We're just giving you an example of what is going on as the computer is figuring out how you're answering questions and how to move forward. You're going to see we're progressing through operations. Just like before, we get that correct, we circle our progress, and we now finally get a pilot question. Now, the pilot question has nothing to do with our score, so it does not affect the table in the lower right, and we do in fact get that one incorrect, but again, we just said it doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything for us, okay? Question 5, this one is scored, all right? It's our first question of cardiology. It's a Bloom's level 2. We got it correct, and we're going to go ahead and show our progress there in the lower right. Now we get another pilot question. That pilot question is going to be in operations. Again, it doesn't matter for our standing on the exam. We happen to get it correct. That's great. It doesn't do anything. Number 7, trauma question 2 out of 3. Okay, we're still at a Bloom's level 2 because your whole series is going to be at the same difficulty level. Okay, we get that one correct and we show our progress there in the table. Okay, now we're going to get our first airway questions. Notice how we've been progressing in all the other categories. We haven't got any airway yet. That's really just a factor of the randomization of the exam. You could get all the categories questions one after another. You could get 3 airway questions in a row, or you might not see 3 airway questions before you're done with your first 20 questions. Okay, so it's all a fact of being random. So we're going to see here that we are now tracking progress in airway because we got that one correct. So we're starting to move up there in that category as well. We get airway question 2 also correct, so we progress a little bit better. Now we're on our final trauma question of that first series. Again, this has all been Bloom's level 2 for that series of questions. Remember, we showed in an earlier video when we focused just on airway how they progress. Well, now you're seeing the nature of how you progress in all these random categories at one time. Okay, so we're going to basically finish out the trauma question series, as you can see right here. And what the computer does is it says, we've answered 3 out of 3 correctly. Okay, now you don't have to answer 3 out of 3 correctly. You could answer 2 out of 3 correctly, and you could still be answering more correct than incorrect. And in that case, you're still going to be able to progress. You can get questions wrong and still progress as long as you're getting more things right than you are wrong. Okay, so what you're going to see here is that we now have a rating. Our rating is a 2 because we were tested at Bloom's level 2 and we're getting them right. So we now have a rating of 2 in trauma, and the plus just indicates that the next series is going to become more difficult, okay? And we're going to move that table out of the way, and you can actually see that's the first place at which we have any ratings for anything because it's the first time we finished a set of questions, all right? Now, the same thing is going to continue to happen in these other categories as we progress through here. We're going to start getting more questions correct. You're going to see more questions get circled in the lower right. Now we're on medical, 3 of 3. Again, we get it correct. We finish that category. We get a rating because we're answering them correctly instead of incorrectly. We get a rating of level 2, and it's going to become more difficult, just like trauma. And you'll see that that one now lines up with question 13 over there. So now we have a rating in medical and a rating in trauma. Okay? This is going to keep progressing. All right. Now, we skipped 14 and 15. We're not going to skip the questions. In reality, we're going to take those questions and answer them, But the reason we didn't show 14 and 15 is because those are the next series of trauma and medical. So we actually can't see them on this table here in the lower right. All right. The truth is they're on a table called Series 2, and the computer's already keeping track of that, but we just can't see it right now with what we're looking at. So you did, in fact, answer those. Your grade is counted. We're just not showing the results of question 14 and 15, right? So question 16, we finished the airway category. You can see we get a rating there because we're answering them more correct than incorrect. And again, you'll see that graphically represented right here. Okay, now we're going to keep progressing forward. You're going to see that we get some cardiology questions here. We start to make some progress in cardiology. And again, we finish out the category. Now, we made it really easy. We answered everything correctly so we could show progress. What if you answer incorrectly? We're going to see that in part 2 of this video, okay? We just kept it easy for now so we could follow along. So you're going to see now we have a rating in cardiology, and we're making pretty even progress amongst the different categories. I know they're a little bit different as far as what question gets us the rating. That's just because of the randomness of the questions, all right? So we're going to see consistent progress here because we keep answering more questions correct than we are incorrect, all right? And that's going to bring us to pretty much the focus of part 1. Now, in part 2, we'll see what happens as we start to answer things incorrectly and whether that changes anything for us. But basically, that gives us a good idea of how the test progresses step by step as you answer the questions. Remember, they're all randomized, so don't look too deep into what questions you're getting one after another. And the other thing is, as long as you're answering more answers correctly than you are incorrectly, you're still going to make progress, even if you are getting some of them wrong, okay? And I guess we're going to see that in a little bit more detail in part 2 of the video series, right? Thanks for watching this one. You can get more help and resources at grabthegobag.com. My name's Matt with Grab the Go Bag, and we'll see you in the next video.